Thank you for joining today's webinar. You are being held in the lobby. The webinar will be starting soon.
Hello, good evening. You're welcome to tonight's IET webinar. My name is Abel and I will be your host tonight. I would like to thank you for taking time out this evening to join us. I believe you're gonna enjoy your time with us tonight. So first of all, I'd like to say we've got quite a number of delegates connected tonight. So if you do have questions, I would encourage you to use the Q&A section, which will try as much as possible to go through all the questions tonight. And if there are any questions we're unable to answer tonight, we will try and get that across to you via correspondence through the IET. A couple of things I would like to say tonight is if you're connected to us today and you are an engineer or you're in the tech space, you're looking to know what the next steps are to becoming a registered chartered engineer, you are in the right place. You will be going through a talk shortly by our speaker, and after that I will be closing and giving you more details about future events with the IET. Without much ado, I will pass on to the speaker for tonight, Bob Wilson, who will be taking us through this lecture. A few words about Bob before I pass on to him. So Bob is an engineering fellow with Network Rail. He is a chartered engineer and a fellow of the IET, and dare I say he's helped thousands or hundreds of engineers to navigate the UK spec framework and successfully attain chartership. So you are going to have a great time tonight with Bob. So I'm going to pass on to Bob now, who will take us through the lecture, and afterwards I will join you at the close. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. I'm hoping that somebody can both hear me and see the screen. We've gone through setup and everything worked then, but everyone knows technology can go wrong, and if it can go wrong, it will. That, I think, was Murphy's third law. Good evening then. My name's Wilson, Bob Wilson. I work with Network Rail at the moment. I've been a registration advisor for the IET for more years than I care to imagine, and as Abel says, I've had the privilege of helping a lot of people to get through their chartered or incorporated status. I've also been asked to say a little bit tonight about technician engineer level, so we've got a few words about that. Why do I do it? Difficult to say that. I do it because I love doing it. It's giving something back to society, which is what the institution is about. I know that when somebody gets the email or the letter from the IET that says, "Sir, you've just got your chartered status, congratulations," I know they have a smile on their face because I've been there. But maybe I've got something wrong with me, but I find my smile is 10 times bigger than theirs, and I love doing it. It's really nice to help people get them recognised. So a few words about the IET, and we'll go into the requirements for registration, professional registration. Okay, something about the IET, something about the membership benefits, what registration is, how the application goes, how you can get some support, and then something about Q&A as we go through the evening. The IET started off in 1871. And that was why for a long time your telephone number was 014051871, because it started in 1871. Lots of things have happened since then. It was renamed the IEE in 1887, and it's taken a long time for many people to transfer the name from IEE to IET. But the IET was created in 2006 when we merged with the IE, the Institution of Incorporated Engineers. They were always in the same building in Savoy House, but sort of another entrance. It's multidiscipline. Yes, we've got 168,000 members. That's a lot of members. And I see on my screen now, got 117 participants joining in the presentation tonight. So we're looking to get any engineer who meets the grade, meets the requirements to become professionally registered at technician level, incorporated engineer level, or chartered engineer level. This gives you an idea of the breakdown. Everyone thinks the IET is all about power. It's not. The biggest segment there, I think you can see, is communications. Yes, power is a big sector. We've got other areas, control and automation, software, electronics, manufacturing and transport in the bottom left-hand corner there, including aerospace, automotive, rail. That's the bit I work in at the moment. So got quite a lot of experience now of the railway, mainline railway in the United Kingdom. And these are some of the companies that have their staff as members of the IET. And it always takes me a few minutes to find us on this one, but I did have a look earlier this evening, colleagues, to see if I could find it. And that's Network Rail, that's where we are. There's a lot of other big organizations on there, Alstom, Altran, Atkins. I'm not going to read all of them, but there's a lot of big organizations and a lot of important organizations there. And the membership levels, apprentice member, student member, associate member, technician member, member and fellow. Now that is not the same as professional registered. If you're, for example, a graduate, I'm very conscious of the graduates within my own organisation because they started their career with Network Rail yesterday morning. Obviously, a little difficult with the COVID restrictions. Now, they are certainly not yet chartered or incorporated engineers, but they can be members. So this is the membership levels, which is a little different to professional registration. One of my young graduates will have MIET written after his name, which shows he's a member of the IET. And in some time in the future, he will get, hopefully, or she, will get their professional registration, and we work towards going for chartered straight away. Fellow at the IET, you normally, but not exclusively, would be a chartered engineer, but it's not an exclusive requirement there. These are engineers who've had, I quote the regulations, superior responsibility and sustained responsibility for 5 years. So there's, it's another group of people, and they tend to get very deeply involved in the affairs of the institution. What are the benefits of membership? Well, one of the big things is ENT magazine. You can get it downloaded onto any form of tablet or phone, something like that, and it's published once a month, and there's a number of useful articles in there. It's all about widening your knowledge into areas that you probably don't know an awful lot about at the moment, but would like to find out. So it's very useful on that. Other membership benefits, there is a tremendous number of events going on during the year. I've got it down here, about 1,300 events across the world annually. And tonight we're participating in just one of those events. That picture is the main lecture theatre at Savoy Place. I think it houses about 500 people, including the two sort of side galleries at high level. Fully up-to-date equipment for presentations, very good sound. Looks pretty formal. A lot of people say it's terrifying to go up on the stage. It is for the first 10 seconds, and then you feel totally relaxed because everyone there is interested in what you're doing. So there's a lot of advantages in that. There's a tremendous number of videos, some of them from IET television, and some of them fact-based, just short videos to help you learn about being an engineer. That's the library, a tremendous collection there. There's a lot more in the basement of the building, and there's a learning centre. There's a lot of staff there who will be able to help you find what you're looking for, both online and in paper. Yes, we still have paper. Very large collection of interesting things there, and very often, if you find a paper that you want to read, which may be a conference publication or a technical journal, they will be able to find that and either send it to you electronically or get a paper printout. Apart from the central part of the organization, there are a number of local networks. Now, one of the things that we were talking about just before we went live on this presentation tonight was that there may be a number of delegates in what I might term, from England's point of view, far-flung parts of the world. And somebody mentioned that we quite often have delegates from Hong Kong, which is wonderful if we can be talking all together. There are networks all over the world, and they're groups of like-minded people who want to work together and promote their profession. You can see there some in England. I'm very deeply involved with the local Buckinghamshire network. There are networks all over the world, which is helpful to people to come together. There's also, apart from geographical split, there is a range of communities which are technically split. For example, I've been a member of the IET Railway Network for a few years, but have actually finished that. You do 3 or 4 years on that. There's a number of other ones like the Midlands Power Group. There were 3 local areas which didn't have enough members individually to form a power subgroup. So 3 or 4 of these local areas got together to form the Midlands Power Group. And it's a question of arranging events and promoting the careers of people. Locations. The one on the right there is London Savoy Place. I think many of you will have been there. It's changed a bit recently with a large refurbishment, but it still looks fundamentally the same on the outside. Birmingham, Austin Court, next to the canal, fabulous venue, full lecture theatre facilities, just a few minutes off the city centre and next to the indoor arena. There's also a site in Glasgow at the Teachers Building. This is the view from the newly refurbished Savoy Place and the roof garden, and you see the London Eye and the Shelmex Centre and the River Thames and Parliament and Big Ben, and it's quite an experience going up there on a summer's day. What can membership help you out with? Well, the first thing is you're standing out from the crowd. You get letters after your name, technician member of the IET, full member of the IET. You keep up to date with engineering development, some through the ENT magazine, some of them through events like this, training sessions, conferences. The idea is to help you build your knowledge and become an improved professional engineer. We've seen already the events in the communities being local groups, sometimes geographically based, sometimes technically specialised. Awards and scholarships. We have Innovations Award every year, which is coming up, I believe, on the 19th of November. Normally there's a sort of a celebration, presentation and a dinner. I think this year is going to be a little bit toned down because of the COVID situation. And the one there, which should have been a little bit clearer, and so I do apologise, but the slide hasn't quite come out correctly, how you become registered as a professional engineer, which is our topic for tonight. This is just showing some of the events, a presentation there, some form of either a factory visit or an exhibition, somebody receiving a presentation for, I don't know what that is particularly, but it might be just getting his chartered status. So what is professional registration? Why do you want to go for it? Why are we talking about it tonight? It demonstrates to the world your knowledge and understanding and competence in the work that you have undertaken and what you're doing now. And it's a recognized benchmark of that you are a very capable professional engineer. The status of professional engineer, that is engineering technician, incorporated engineer or chartered engineer, is governed in the UK by the Engineering Council. And the IET, like any of the professional engineering institutions, is licensed on the behalf of the Engineering Council to award the 3 levels of professional registration. Most people join one of the institutions for the purpose of professional registration, but I would add there, ladies and gentlemen, to increase knowledge and widen contacts. And it really is the important thing, is to be able to demonstrate your competence as an engineer. So how do we do that? Why become professionally registered? It's all about recognition, what you've learned to prove to an external organization that you are a competent professional engineer. This is the levels we have within the IET. We've got chartered engineer, incorporated engineer, engineering technician. But engineering technician is, there are 2 parts. The IC, the IT side, the communications and computer side, is a separate one, but they're equal in their value. And there's also, you can go through what's known as the British Computer Society as a chartered IT professional, and also through to become a chartered manager. So there's a tremendous number of qualifications that can be obtained, which is going to help you in your career. You stand out from the crowd when somebody says, "What do you do for a living?" I'm an engineer. You say, "Well, I'm a chartered engineer." So what does that do? A lot of people don't know, but we need to be able to ensure that society recognizes what a professional engineer is. In other parts of the world, I think I'm correct in saying in Germany, you become a professional engineer, the same as the UK, but your title is engineer, not Mr. or Mrs. or whatever, but engineer. I think that applies in a number of countries, and that's something that is helps you stand out from the crowd, demonstrates that you are a good engineer. It does help improve career prospects. Many organizations require their middle to senior people to be professionally registered with a relevant organization. And you see it on job adverts everywhere, either fully chartered or qualifications leading to chartered. And it's a tremendous thing for an organization to say, all of my engineering staff are professionally registered. It says something about how the organization works. Right, so when you get professional registration, to start with, and I'm thinking of some of the graduates that we've got at the moment, they've got their bachelor's degree or their master's degree. We'll come to why there's the 2 differences there in a little while. And then they get their membership of the IET, which they can put after their name. And then later on, they get CEng. So it's BEng, MSc, CEng, FIET. That's a demonstration of competence. So what are the actual levels? The engineering technician is more about using proven techniques and might hold supervisory or technical positions, contribute to design, maintain products, and apply safe systems of work. That's a little different from the, sorry, let's go back a stage there. The ICT technician is very similar, support and enable, use appropriate tools, And to be able to do that, we have in UK Spec, which is the document which defines the requirements to become professionally registered at Eng Tech, iEng and CEng. This is a document written by the Engineering Council in conjunction with the professional engineering institutions. Now, the one you can see there on the screen is the front cover of UK Spec 3, which is the current one as of today. UK Spec 4 has been prepared in draft. I haven't actually seen it yet, but I've been told that it's the same requirements but expressed in a much clearer format. So that's pretty good. There are 5 groups of competencies, groups A through to E. A is about knowledge and understanding. B, design, development of processes. C, responsibility management or leadership. D, communication, interpersonal skills. And E, professional commitment. We'll look at those in a bit more detail as we go through this evening. The competence A, knowledge and understanding, and they are very often split into 2 or 3 subgroups. So you might have competence A1, competence A2, competence A3. And these are about the engineering knowledge that you have, how you use that in practicality, how you review and select the techniques, procedures and methods to undertake complex tasks, how you use your initiative and experience to solve a problem, how you use appropriate scientific principles. I'm going through something at the moment to do with the railway. And when I started about 6 weeks ago, I really didn't know how I was going to tackle it. But you sit down and try and work it out. You're just using basic engineering principles and it's starting to come out and flow correctly. Competence B is the design, development, manufacture, the practicalities of actually building something. And how you identify the problems, you use resources to be able to do the task. It's not always just doing it a single-minded person. It's working in a team and leading that team, which brings nicely to competence C, management and leadership, how you accept personal responsibility, that you get others to work with you, you take the responsibility for them. And I think they're one of the things that I use as an example there is electrical safety or safety in general, that you might be the leader of a project and you are responsible for the safety of everyone who's working on that project. That safety is paramount. You need to be able to communicate. This is covered in competence D. And one of the things on that, guys and ladies, is being able to give a presentation. And for those who have given presentations, it's actually quite difficult to get onto the stage and start a presentation, even if you are an expert in that subject. It's pretty hard to do. You've got to be able to do it. And it has to be communicate in English on technical matters. You need to be able to describe a project you're working on. And you're going to need that when you put in for a professional registration and you have to give a little presentation at the interview, something to do with the work that you do. How you work with colleagues and clients, pretty critical. You've got to get on as a team. And when it says contribute to discussions, this is things like in meetings, and you don't sit there in the back corner quietly. Sort of make the right contribution to the meeting. Maybe control the meeting by writing the minutes of the meeting, maybe doing the agenda, that sort of thing. It's working with people. And then competence E, professional commitment. You must adhere to the IET's code of conduct. And there's quite a lot about that in the UK spec. The one I think is the most important one is, and this is a personal advice, this has come to me time and time again. Young graduates come to me and says, I don't know what to do. What do I do? And say, okay, well, you stop work. That's the first thing you do, because if you don't stop work, you're probably going to make things more difficult than they are at the moment. Then you put your hand up and say, I don't know how to do this. So you admit it. I do it all the time, have no problem with that at all. And then you go and find out. And if you can't go and find out how to do something, I think you shouldn't be in the job. How do you find out? Go and ask somebody, sit down and work it out. Go and find a book, have a look on the internet, Google something, go to the IET library. There are many ways of finding out information. And in fact, ladies and gentlemen, you're doing that right now. You're trying to find out how you get professionally registered. So you didn't know how to do it. So you said, how do I do it? Oh, the IET's got an event on. I'll go and listen to that. So you're trying to do something about that now. You need to be able to manage and apply safe systems of work because you have a responsibility to the staff who work with you. You've got to look at sustainable development, the environment, and I'm not just thinking of global warming, but the environment overall. And something that comes to mind there is the development of electrically powered aircraft. Much better to have an electric airplane at some time in the future, maybe not quite just yet, but at some stage in the future to have an electric aircraft rather than a gas guzzling thing chucking out fumes from fuel called JP4. You also need to do some professional development. And if you don't do professional development, you'll be out of date very quickly. You need to plan professional development. You will not be able to make a plan today for your professional development over the next 5 or 10 years or something like that. It doesn't work quite like that. What you need to do is to know what your weaknesses are, which is really what I said earlier about you didn't know how to do something. So pour up saying, don't know how to do that. Stop work, come find out. And you need to keep your competencies up to date. And I won't tell you how many years ago, but when I was at university doing my first degree, we had valves. I don't know whether you remember them, transistors in bottles. It's changed a bit since then. Right, if you're looking at Eng Tech, you need to, first of all, get membership of the IET as a technician member. So you get TM IET written after your name. Develop the competence under UK spec, become competent, do the application form and get assessed. That sounds pretty simple. How do you do it in practice? Well, what you have to have, and this bit of the presentation this evening is all about whatever level of professional registration you're looking for. And there's two parts to it. There's the underpinning knowledge and understanding, UK and U, and competence. And this is academic technical knowledge, and this is being able to do the job. The two, I think, fit together very nicely in this little sort of Venn diagram. And you need some qualifications for the underpinning knowledge and understanding. For chartered engineer, the academic qualifications is an accredited master's degree or an accredited bachelor's degree plus some additional learning at master's level. For incorporated engineer, it's accredited bachelor's degree or HND or foundation degree plus further learning. And for the Eng Tech, it's level 3 technician qualification. Now, we're going to go into this in quite a bit more details in a few minutes, because the big question there, what do you do if you don't hold these exemplifying qualifications? And sometime fairly soon, I'm going to give you a surprise with a figure on that. If you don't have the qualifications, that does not mean, and I stress that does not mean that you're not a competent, good professional engineer. It just means that you may not have had 2 or 3 years in a university lecture theatre and laboratory and sat an exam to prove that you've got the knowledge. You can still get that knowledge by, we've got here work-based learning. When you've been doing the job for a number of years, and I'm not going to be drawn there on an exact number like 5 or 10 or 23 years or whatever somebody might be thinking about, but you do learn the job. And we're looking at, has the candidate had the chance to learn? What did they learn from experience, and have they used it? And there are indeed some extremely good professional engineers who are chartered or incorporated, but let's look at charter for the moment, who don't have the formal qualifications because the society where they were in their late teens, early 20s, they didn't have the opportunity to go to an academic institution, a university, and get a master's or a bachelor's degree, but they still learned how to do the job. And I'm thinking of a particular guy I'm advising at the moment who has a wealth of knowledge, and his actual supplementary form showing how he has got this extra knowledge, I've signed off just this afternoon. I don't know whether he's listening. I won't mention the name, obviously, but if he is listening and he knows that I've signed the form off today, he'll know who he is and he'll get through. For technician level, you don't have an interview. You're given 3 questions to write up, and it's best just to look at this slide. So you give an example of a project where you solved a technical problem. Say what you did and how you selected the appropriate techniques. Now, that one of the words there is terribly important, because the thing, your role. I had somebody a little while ago, I don't think she's listening because she's already got her chartered, and she said she was involved in a particular very large project on the railway in the United Kingdom. So I wrote back and said, okay, did you make the tea? They said, no, of course I didn't. Oh, she said, why'd you ask? Well, making the tea is involved in the project. And she said, no, I didn't do that. I said, well, what did you do? He said, well, I was responsible for X million pounds, Y number of people, all these things. I said, that's your role. That's what you did. And that's what we're looking at, not what the team did. What did you do? What's your role? And it is terribly important to make sure you're putting down what you've done rather than what the team did that you might be a part of. The assessment question 1, we're looking at the principles involved as to what you've done. What you're trying to do here is demonstrate what your underpinning knowledge and understanding is and how you've got it and how you've applied it. How did you identify the problems? What were the principles that you used? What was your responsibility? How was your work checked? And this is something that comes up quite a lot. Everyone, I believe, has their work checked by one person or another. But what was your level of responsibility? Were you allowed just to do something small, or did you take a larger part on the thing? How big is your team? What did you do? Okay. The second question for engineering technician is about planning and organisation of the resources to be able to get the job done. How you got feedback on that? Again, got a more detailed list there. It's about resources, bringing people together. How do you deal with the safety? What was your method of prioritizing? These are the questions. And then assessment question 3, how have you complied with the institution's code of conduct? Okay, and how are you continuing to develop your knowledge and skills? And that's the basis, guys and girls, about going for engineering technician. It's proving that you are able to do the job and that you're competent. But it's 3 questions. There is no interview. Now, what happens, and this applies to all levels of membership, get the application form done. It will be reviewed by some assessors within, the initial review is somebody, probably the applicant himself or herself filling it in, goes to the IET, other people who are trained as assessors, but they're peers. So we need people who understand the realities of the world. They understand what this person has been doing, and they will try to work out whether that person is worthy or not of getting professional registration. For engineering technician, that's it, there's a final decision is made. For incorporated and chartered, there's another level here, there is an interview. We'll come to that in a moment. And what do you get at the end of it? Nice little certificate. This particular one is engineering technician, but the same principle is there for chartered, incorporated, and the 2 levels of technician. Now, moving on now to chartered engineer, I'll put those two slides up together because they show the difference as well. What we're looking at is chartered develops new or existing technology, whereas incorporated maintains and manage more current technology. Chartered works through innovation, creativity. When you start the project, maybe you really haven't got much idea how you're going to solve it, but you come up with innovations and find a way of doing it. Whereas the incorporated engineer, just a little bit less responsibility using existing and emerging technology. There's pioneer technology rather than manage more existing things. Now, a lot of people have asked me, should I go for incorporated or should I go for chartered? If you've got the academics for chartered, it may be good to do that, but incorporated is not, and I do repeat not, people have said, is it what you get when you put in for chartered and you don't get it? You get awarded incorporated and said it's failed chartered. No, definitely no. Incorporated can be regarded as a step towards chartered. And recently I've seemed to have had a lot of applications where somebody says, well, I don't know what I want to do, whether I want to go for incorporated, where I've got a pretty good chance of getting it, but I've got a lower chance of getting chartered. What should I do? And I always say, go for incorporated, because it's better to be registered at incorporated now than to be going for chartered in 5 years' time or whatever it might be, and in the meantime having nothing. But when I say go for incorporated, pause at incorporated and stretch for chartered when you're ready. Maybe that's a couple of years down the road. But certainly I really do want everyone to understand incorporated is not a massive difference from chartered. There is a difference, but it's not a massive difference. And again, for incorporated or chartered, you've got the same basic UK spec competencies. Now, well, we've got Part A, knowledge and understanding, Part B, application to practice, Part C, leadership, Part 4, interpersonal skills, Part D, sorry, which includes giving presentations, and Part E, commitment to professional standards. Okay, now, this is the one that people get very, very surprised about. For the academics to demonstrate underpinning knowledge and understanding, for EngTech, whether it be the IC side or non-IC side, is a level 3 qualification, NVQ, HND, that sort of thing. For incorporated engineer, it's a bachelor's degree in something relevant. And for chartered engineer, it's either a bachelor's degree plus an additional master's or a single accredited master's degree. But the important thing is that we're saying or equivalent, and that or equivalent is very, very important, because wait for it, I was surprised at this, 68% of successful applications don't have these academic qualifications. They go through what's called it's had various names over the years. I think it's called the individual route at the moment, but it has been the sort of learned path, mature student route, something like that. And what it is, we're reflecting the fact that in this case, take DI-Eng, that the applicant has sat at university for 3 years and proven that he or she has got the knowledge because they've taken an exam. Okay, somebody who hasn't had the chance to go to university, or just hasn't for whatever reason, might have learned exactly the same during their lifetime, and therefore have the same qualifications, and therefore should have the same ability to get professionally registered. But how do you demonstrate it? Well, in this case, at the end of the 3 years, you take an exam and you get a certificate. This is a bit more difficult, but the important thing is to be able to show why you needed to learn something, what you learned, how you learned it, and how you've applied it. And honestly, ladies and gents, when I first saw 68%. I was surprised, but I understand it. A lot of the applications I have at the moment are very fine engineers, but they haven't got the academic qualifications which they could have obtained by sitting in university, but they have all the knowledge which they've learned from the University of Life, what might be. And they've demonstrated their knowledge from further learning and work-based learning to be able to show that they are equivalent. And I do stress, when we say through the IET, we say an accredited bachelor's degree or equivalent. And it's very important to do that. We've seen this one before, but it's worth just having another look. How else have you obtained the underpinning knowledge and understanding? Formal further learning, work-based learning. How did the candidate have the chance to learn? What did they learn from experience? What did they learn from? I've got a guy going through at the moment who has been able to demonstrate where he's got his knowledge from, and some of the time he's put down that he didn't know, so he hired a consultant to teach him. It's all right. He's got the knowledge and he knows how to use it. That's what we're looking for. Right, professional registration. What do? Join the IET, okay? Develop your competencies. Now, people get confused between IPD and CPD. IPD is initial professional development, and that's what you learn in graduate days and earlier days in your career. And then you start looking, how do my abilities, my competence align with the UK specification, UK Spec 3? And just thinking of that, ladies and gents, it's called UK Spec at the moment. It has had other names in the past. One of them was called SARTOR, so you may hear that term. SARTOR just stands for Standards and Routes to Registration, but it's the same basic principle. It's how you define the competences and the academics to meet the requirements of the Engineering Council. Then a little bit later on in your career, when you've got these well and truly under your belts and you've got the academics, usually at this stage, but they might be developing all the way along here, get the application started and get somebody to, well, you need to get somebody at this stage to have a look at it. That's why we have the role of professional registration advisor. Then that goes to the IET, and they will have a look at that with trained assessors who are trained in two ways. One is how to assess against the documentation and with regular updates, I stress, but also they would know something about the field that you work in. So working for the railway in the UK, I get a tremendous number of applications from people who are within the railway or the railway environment, and usually means I've got some idea what they're doing, but it's also up to them to be able to express what they're doing. And then there's an interview. Now, the interview, I know most people, probably myself included, are terrified of interviews. When you get to interview, do not be terrified. Nobody is trying to catch you out with difficult questions and double negatives and horrible things like that. They're just trying to see, are you really ready for professional registration? The interviews are conducted for incorporated and chartered levels. They're conducted by peers, so they know something about it in the technical, the academic sense, and they've been trained as interviewers. So when you get to that stage, do not start worrying about it. What I do say here, and this is a tip that I've used quite a lot, when you start mapping competencies against UK Spec, I've got UK Spec in front of me, and I'm going to read just a little bit about it. And it says, chartered engineers are able to demonstrate the theoretical knowledge to solve problems in new technologies and develop new analytical techniques. Okay, how do I, as the applicant, describe that I can do that? And what I've always advise people to do is to take each of these competencies and put down how they deal with it. So when somebody says, how do you deal with this? And how do you meet? Let's go back to presentations. somebody says, how can you prove that you can give a presentation? Well, you're going to do it in the interview in any case. But if you can say, well, I was at a conference in Berlin 6 months ago and I spoke to 200 people, and I'm actually, ladies and gents, I'm looking now, I've got 125 people in participating in this presentation this evening. So if somebody says, how do you know that you can do a presentation? Say, well, you know, people come and listen and they don't sort of fall asleep too often, which is actually very difficult to know about when you're on an electronic system like this. But when you're actually in the lecture theatre or a meeting room, you know how people are responding. Write a list as to how you have all your competencies. Explain every single one of them that's in UK Spec 3 and how you meet them. You end up with a map as to how you are. Because when it comes to the application being sent to the IET and reviewed by the assessors before the actual interview, you're going to be scored on that because we're engineers and we love numbers. Okay, so if you, let's go back to the giving presentation. Talking to your pal over a cup of coffee in the canteen is giving a presentation. Talking to 2,000 people at a global conference in Shanghai where you're translated at the same time into 16 different languages is giving a presentation, but heaven help me, it's a very different one. So you need to be able to say what level you are. And for each of the competencies, you're scored on a marking system of 1 to 4. And level 3 is fully competent. 4 is expert. Level 2 is some competence. And level 1 is probably not a lot. And when you start as starting your career as a professional engineer, you're probably at level 1 in quite a lot of these, but you build that competence up. You wouldn't expect the graduates who started in my organization yesterday to be giving a presentation to 2,000 people at a global conference in Shanghai. You might be a bit further in your career. And I've done that myself, terrifying, but it's done. So you get marked according to your level of competence on the scales 1, 2, 3, 4. You need to get an average across each of the groups, which if I can just go back, it's not going to come up, but it doesn't matter. But we've got these 5 groups, A, B, C, D, and E, and the subgroups in there, so A1, A2, B1, B2. And you need to be able to get an average across all of those of about 2.8, 2.9. It's not a figure that is sacrosanct to 5 decimal places, but something in the region of 2.8, 2.9, which means that, and you've got to get a fair number of 3s. In fact, in the competencies A and B, you must get a level 3 in all of those, be scored at level 3 to have your application seriously considered. But if you're a little bit weak in one or two others, you might get a level 2 somewhere. If you really think that you're only a level 1, my advice to you is don't bother to send the application off. Wait till you're level 2 to 3 and self-judge against the competences in UK Spec and go and see your friendly professional registration advisor. If you want to find a PRA, all you need to do is go down to the IET website and click around there for a little bit, and you can find contact details of a PRA who's in your geographic area. Sometimes helps if you can find one who's in your same technical area, but it is quite possible to do that. Now, when you actually do the application form, in the past, it's been paper-based. And what I've always advocated, and I really mean this as the big tip of the evening, do your competence document and try to self-score yourself. Be able to demonstrate how you meet competence B3. And I'm going to look at one there in front of me. Part of B3 is evaluate the outcome against the original specification. So as a comparison exercise there, and explain to yourself how you do that. Okay. And then from the competence document, you can rearrange that as a CV that says, during my time with whichever company it was, I did certain things. Then you can say implicitly, which demonstrated my competence B3, or just leave it to the assessor to say, oh, good God, that's a B3. Oh, there's an E5 here. And the assessors can start looking at scoring and saying, is this candidate ready for interview? And in general, and you can't hold me to it, but in general, if you get, after the application's gone in, if you're invited for an interview, you got a pretty good chance of getting the professional registration that you're applying for, because no institution is going to interview somebody just for the sake of interviewing them. They only interview the serious candidates. So it's pretty important to get the CV-based application. I always say, base it on the competencies so that the assessors can say, the academics are, he took a master's degree at Strathclyde, whatever it is, that's no problem. Or there's sufficient evidence in the form to show how that candidate has learnt on the job and developed the knowledge over the years. And then to use the rest of the application to demonstrate the competencies. Okay. Now, in the past, that was done on paper. Now, it's done with Career Manager. It doesn't really, to be honest, it doesn't make very much difference. The best thing about Career Manager is that it's online. You can add a bit tomorrow, or you can do a bit more the next week, whenever you feel like it. It means you have to have a screen, a web connection, but that's pretty easy these days, and it's backed up. So if you do lose it, and I'm terrible for losing bits of paper. The other good reason for it is that if you apply via Career Manager, it's actually a lower cost. And I can't quote you the figures just at the moment because I don't have them, but it is cheaper by going with Career Manager. And Career Manager is very well laid out to explain what you need to do to put in there. So what we're looking at then, we've joined the IET, develop competencies as initial professional development. Now, at this end of the timescale, when you get your professional registration, then instead of doing initial professional development, you're doing continuing professional development, CPD. And you need to do that, and you need to record it. And I know I went to a presentation a few years ago where the speaker sort of said, I went to the doctor's the other day, and there's a notice on the wall that he doesn't believe in things like antibiotics. And everyone sort of said, cool, I wouldn't go and see him. So the speaker then said, you, sir, in the back right-hand corner, yes, you in the green shirt, what have you done to show that you've developed your knowledge in the last 6 months? And there was usually an embarrassed shuffle, and they said, well, nothing very much. And the speaker said, well, why should I come to you for professional advice? Because we've already established that you wouldn't go to that doctor, so why should I come to see you? So it's pretty important to stay up to date. And in fact, some of the things I'm going through at the moment, a few years ago when I took my degree, I wouldn't have believed that technology would have ever moved that far, but that's where we are now. So yes, you need to do professional development, and you can record it on the Career Manager platform. Career Manager is changing at the moment. These pictures are of the screenshots for Career Manager as it is up until now, but there's a new version coming out which will do the same basic function of recording what you've been doing, but hopefully in a better way. I have seen a little bit about it, but I haven't seen all the details. Career Manager is also very useful that it tells you what you need to fill in on. And you might find that you're weak in some areas. Well, that's the next stage of your learning and development plan, guys and girls, because if you say, well, to be honest, I need to be a level 2 in competence B3 and I really can only demonstrate a level 1, that's what you've got to do for the next part of your career. So use it as a gap analysis. Then you can, there's a function sharing. If you've got a professional registration advisor already lined up, let him have a guest ticket, or her, it might be a lady professional registration advisor. Sadly, there are not enough ladies in the volunteering side of any of the institutions. So it's something I'm personally doing, and I have encouraged a number of ladies to become PRAs within the railway industry. That is incredibly rewarding. Yeah, and those PRAs can have a look at the form, go through it and say, well, I think you're a bit weak on this, and self-score it. Look at it. Am I not very competent, level 1, competent but supervised, maybe level 2, fully competent and much less supervised. I mean, some of the things I do at the moment, I've just told, there's the problem, get on with it, boy. Great, that's what I love. Or am I at level 4, an expert? But have a look at it, try and work out for yourselves how other people see you, whether you are, expert, fully competent level 3, some competence level 2 or level 1, not very competent yet. Use that to work out where you're going next. But you have to be honest about that, and you have to be a bit blunt as well. I had one guy do his competence document. This is just how he answers each competence within UK spec. And he put down level 4 for every single thing. Now, he was one of my staff at the time, and he wasn't level 4, but he was pretty good. And his justification for doing it was saying, well, if I don't believe in myself, why should anyone else believe in me? And there's probably some truth in that. But what you're trying to do is present yourself in the best light possible to the assessors and the interviewers within the IET, their peers. They know what you're going through. I know it's not easy, but they're doing their best to help you get through. That's why we do this volunteer role. Don't wish to sound sort of too cringy, but we do it because we love doing it, and it's really wonderful. Said at the beginning of this evening, when you get somebody through their chartered and they ring you and say, hey Bob, I got my letter from the IET this morning. It's a lovely day. So this is using the older scheme. Yeah, the principles are exactly the same. The scores 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got knowledge and understanding. Competence A1, maintain and extend a sound theoretical approach. You need to assess yourself. Are you a practitioner? Now, that's what I would call nowadays level 3 would be fully competent. Supervised practitioner here would be some competence. Trainee, not a lot of competence, but we're all trainees at some stage. So this candidate said, well, I think I'm a level 2 on engaging creative and innovative development, but I'm a level 3 as a practitioner on maintaining, extending a sound theoretical approach. Now here we've got one here, conduct appropriate research, undertake design and development, no experience at all. So this candidate's got to do something to be able to move across to at least a 2 or a 3. I have seen this as supervised practitioner and unsupervised practitioner. And what's the difference between supervised practitioner, the lower level, and unsupervised practitioner? Well, I'm a supervised practitioner because my boss likes to check what I've done. That's what he gets paid for. And that's absolutely fine. But what he normally says, you've got a spelling mistake on page 17 in the 3rd paragraph. It's, oh, sorry, I missed the spell checker. That's what you might call supervised practitioner. Sorry, unsupervised, do apologize there. Supervised practitioner is when you give a report to your boss and he says, you got your name right, but the rest of it really needs a bit more attention. So the difference between the two is fairly clear. And this table within the Career Manager helps you work out where you're a bit weak there. You've got to be honest. No point in trying to get through something if you're not ready for it there. And this shows a little bit more of UK Spec 3, gives you a bit more details. And you really do need to get a copy of UK Spec 3. And at the back, there's some good examples. The table is called Table of Competence and Commitment Standards, and there's 3 main columns: Engineering Technician, Incorporated and Chartered. Do have a look at it. Work out where you are. Go and see your registration advisor and see what he or she says. Okay. Then this is the assessment summary after you've put everything in, and it says, in this case, this candidate's got 1 as a trainee, 7 as supervised practitioner, 8 as practitioner level, and the competences are listed below. It's only feeding back what you've put in, and sort of level of practitioner. Now, oh, sorry, the mouse just slipped. Sorry about that. In this case, with a level 1 for one of the competences, my advice would be to go back and do some more learning, develop some more competences, and come back in a little while. It's pretty important that I think the official thing is level 3, fully competent or unsupervised practitioner, must be achieved for the competences A and B. The average has got to be about 2.8. It's not sacrosanct. It's not 5 decimal places. It's, is this candidate ready for being assessed as chartered engineer? Okay. If you get any level 1s, honest advice is don't bother to send this form off, because you're not going to get through. Go and talk to your PRA, talk to your line manager, and try and work out what you need to do to get that level 1 to a level 2 or a level 3. Put it in your plan for career development. We've seen that one where we're starting off, we're mapping the competence, your own competence document, get the application. There's a stage there, get the your PRA to have a look at it. Then the assessment within the IET, and then the actual interview to see whether you're ready for it. How do you get support on this? Well, I'll put the whole lot up there because it's probably easier. There's a lot of information on the IET website online with Career Manager, UK Spec. Do get a copy as a PDF from the Engineering Council. There are a number of, we've spoken of this term, professional registration advisors within the IET. There are mentors as well who will help you on a much more, I think, a fatherly-like basis to help you get through your initial stages of your career and get you ready to see the PRA and get some more detailed advice about the actual application. There's a lot of staff within the IET registration department who can help you. And at work, you've got the same mentors. Mentor at work doesn't necessarily have to be an IET registered mentor, but they probably are the same person. For example, I'm an IET mentor, but I just do a role mentoring a number of graduates at a time. And the ultimate aim is to get them through chartered status. And had one a little while ago. Every time he wrote a report for me to have a look at on a quarterly basis, I was giving him level 3. I was saying, this guy is ready for chartered status. And he put me and a very senior professional engineer within the organization down as his supporters. We'll come to supporters in a moment, guys. And the other guy said, I don't think he's anywhere near ready for this. He is not old enough. No, you can't say that, because as soon as you say somebody is not old enough, you're implying there is an age limit, and that is not the case. There's no way that you can say, well, he's only, in this case, he was 25, and this senior manager said, well, I don't think a 25-year-old is ready for professional registration at Chartered. I said, look, it's not your job to do that. It's your job to support him, like I'm supporting him. It's up to the IET to decide whether he is ready for professional registration at Chartered. And the chap was exceptionally good. I don't think he'll be listening tonight. If he is, he knows who he is. But he was exceptionally good. And my view was he was ready. So I said, we're going to get you the best application you can get, but it's the IET that decides whether you get your Chartered. And he got it at the age of 25. Now, that was pretty good. It is an early age. Again, I'm not saying you have to be 38 and a half to get your Chartered. It doesn't work like that. But this guy was young, but he was exceptionally good, and he was fully worthy of getting his Chartered, and he's got it. Okay, this is the application form. A lot of it's fairly normal. This is the most of it's, you know, the usual things. Do you know your name and address and date of birth and things like that, membership number, employment, education, what you've got, various things, achievements, career history. Now, for each bit of your career, you might say, I worked with company XYZ as substations engineer, whatever, from this date to that date. During that time, my responsibility was and my achievements were, take it off the competence document that you've already written out. I did some training. Then you go to your professional registration advisor and ask him, what do you think of it? And then take his or her word, because I've always believed if you want expert advice, go to an expert. Now, the IET registration department can offer you help. There are some guidance notes available. One of the things I use a lot, although I've been doing it for a few years now, but I do use a document from the IET, which I think is freely available, on assessing work-based learning. You know, what did you not know? Why did you need to know it? How did you learn it? Did you sit next to Fred for 6 months? Did you go and buy a book? Did you do a 3-month training course? And how have you used it? And I'll be honest, I'm doing some IT training at the moment on surge diverters on low voltage systems. I didn't know anything about it. Oh, not enough to be able to do the job. And so I looked around and found that the IET does an online training course, so I've logged in on that. I think we've seen that already with Career Manager. Now, what you need to do on the application, pick 2 or 3 best projects. Don't sort of put something down, oh, I designed a little component that sells for 50 quid, unless you can sell 30 million of them in the first week, then put it down. But something that you've done that demonstrate your ability in the last, it's got there in the last 5 years. That again is not sacrosanct, but it's probably in the last 5 years that you've been doing projects that are worthy of being awarded charter status. And what did you do? Again, not I was involved in. Don't use that word involvement. I led, I was responsible, I designed. It's what you've done, the value of it. Again, something of importance there. You know, is it a minor thing? Did you design a new teacup? Wow. Or did you design a new radar system for Birmingham Airport? That's something else that I haven't mentioned yet. In the definition of chartered, we saw there was something about responsibility, technical innovation, whatever. There is an alternative for that in terms of responsibility for large projects which aren't necessarily innovative. And I quote you there, something like the chief engineer of London Airport, Heathrow. I'm not sure that when I'm a passenger in a 747 coming into 28 right, that I want somebody to say, hey, we've got the very latest bit of technology down there. It might fail because it's in the infant mortality stage. What I want to know, excuse me, is it safe and reliable? And that may not be the latest technology. So somebody might be involved in a very large project with tremendous complexity, responsibility for safety, but not terribly innovative. So don't be too struck on the innovative level for chartered. Responsibility and complexity can be just as important. Right, what is responsibility? Maybe something about staffing, the budget. You know, what you're actually doing in the organisation. What were the problems that you met? How did you solve them? I'm doing something at the moment where I've blithely said, I think we can do X, Y, and Z, and they've said, well, go and do it. And maybe not quite as easy to do as planned, but we're getting there. If it's top secret, or commercial, you've got to be a little bit careful. You can't say, oh, I've just put a new radar in a particular bomber that operates on a particular frequency and that sort of thing. But you can go through the principles, how you solve the problem, what it's done for you, and quote details that are in the public domain. Something you can do there quite a lot. Got to be careful about clients and trade secrets. If in doubt, check. Okay, I would say a little bit more, just be sensible. You need to have two supporters for an application, and these are people who are able to confirm when you said I did X, Y, and Z and I was responsible for, they need to be able to confirm that it's true. If they weren't true, the interviewers would probably find out in any case. Because they have a habit of asking all the questions, not to make you sweat, but just to make sure you really do know what's happening. The two supporters, always somebody who knows you professionally, working with you, and ideally for about 2 years. Again, there's no sacrosanct figure on 2 years, but if you can say, if you can only say I've worked with this boss for the last week, he's not really going to be able to say how good an engineer you are. I think 2 years is about right, but it's not absolutely sacrosanct. Now, the supporter really needs to be in one of the professional engineering institutions, which can be a bit difficult if you're, say, a contractor that might be doing 6 months here and 6 months there. And I'm thinking of somebody I've been working with in the railway a year or two back. It's actually quite difficult to build up a 2-year relationship. If that person has got Engineering Council accreditation, particularly if they're a member of the appropriate institution, in this case the IET or fellow of the IET, it does count a little bit. It's not a question of point scoring. Oh, I should get my chartered status because my two supporters are both fellows of the IET and they're both chief engineer within the railway or something like that. It doesn't count like that. It might have done decades ago, but it certainly doesn't now. So just a couple of people who know what you've been doing. You can have another supporter if you want, if you think that there's something not quite already got across to the engineering, to the IET from the other supporters. They're asked to do a little write-up on you, and they're asked to say, do you really think this candidate works to competence B3, whatever it might be. So there is a bit of feedback on that. Right, we've seen that one, that's submitting the application. Now, when the application is written, get a PRA to check it. Yeah, that is usually the golden rule. Submit it via Career Manager, that's the online application. Trained assessors will look at that. They know something about your job. They're chosen to assess your application because they know something about what you're doing. Then maybe they have the right to say, I'm not quite sure you've put sufficient evidence. They're not challenging to say, sorry, you got that wrong, but they're just looking for a little bit more information as to what you've been doing. Okay. Then you get the professional review interview. And there are times when we've got this bit technical report, sometimes it is not clear that the applicant really does have all the underpinning knowledge and understanding that is needed. And so the applicant will be invited to write a technical report and usually have a technical interview, which can be, I'm a technical interviewer for for anything. It's not just within the railway, it's whatever I'm asked to technically interview about. And very often the candidate starts, it's usually on a screen these days, but the candidate, you look at a written report and you think, well, they either don't know anything about it or they're not very good at writing reports. And general experience is that when you've been talking to this person for about 2 hours, you know whether they really do know the technical side of their part of the industry. And it's actually rather rewarding to develop a relationship with a total stranger who's pretty nervous and guide them through and make sure they can demonstrate they really do know what they're doing technically. I've had a number of very interesting ones, and generally I find that if they do have to do a technical report, they are usually pretty strong and they get through. Then there's the professional review itself, which is the interview, usually about an hour. It's divided into 2 parts. For the first 15 minutes, you have to give a presentation on something, but what they're looking for, what we're looking for, is to see, can you give a presentation? Most people grab the last PowerPoint from their computer, the most recent presentation they've done at work, and come and talk about it. Then the interviewers will, it's not a grueling session to say, oh, you said this, I'm challenging you, like it might be in a court of law. It's not like that. They're trying to see whether you're ready as a professional engineer. And I had one today, a chap was submitting additional evidence, and you could see from what he'd put down what the interviewers were going to pick for the topic of their questions. And I know the guy well, and I know what he will do as his presentation. He will do the technical subject which he used to demonstrate his additional knowledge to make sure that he got the equivalent of master's degree. I know he'll use that, and I don't suppose he's listening tonight. I won't mention the name in any case, but he will use that, and I'm assuming that the IET will find 2 interviewers who understand that topic, because it's not a court of law, it's to see whether you're really up to the mark. And then the results get sent in the post. So from your performance interview, at the moment they're online. It can be done at the IET at Savoy Place or other IET premises like in Glasgow or Birmingham. Sometimes the IET takes a room in a hotel, for example in Cardiff. And there's a 1 hour interview, 15 minutes presentation, and 45 minutes on the presentation itself. Have a look on YouTube, search IET PRA, Professional Registration Interview. Give some good examples there. Now there's also a company-based registration scheme. Instead of having to find a registration advisor, this notorious PRA, the IET is working with a number of companies to find, I'll say, half a dozen people who are looking towards getting their professional registration. And the IET will help you by providing a PRA to meet those 6 or 7 guys and girls and try and get them to work as a team. So if one's flagging a bit with the application, the others will spur them on a little bit. And the IET will facilitate discussions with the PRA while they write the application, and this is a bit of mutual support. It's called a company-based registration scheme. As I said, I work with Network Rail, and we are looking at a few on that at the moment. Then get the application off. And the idea is that it goes through in about 6 months, and it's a new innovation from the IET, and it's starting to work. Fees. I'm not saying these fees are bang up to date because it does say 2018, but there are fees at each level for the membership fee of the IET, plus the Engineering Council registration fee, which is separate, and the same for fellows of the IET or normal, more members rather than just fellows. Fellows, you can see it's a little bit more. It's certainly a bit more than 264 now. I paid my subscription on 1st of January and it was about £300, but it's well worth every penny. That isn't meant as a plug for the IET services, but you get out what you put in. If you join something like the IET, participate in it, you will get out a lot more than the subscription that you put into it. It's tremendously useful. Applying, you can apply online, you can give them a call. I'm not quite sure there, I do apologize what RDM means, but there's a text method of applying as well. The career history, very important. Tell them what you did. I developed, built, tested, commissioned, not I was involved with. And I commissioned it rather than the job was commissioned. So it's what you did. Watch the jargon. You may well understand it. Not everyone else does. And remember that the person concerned for the assessment and for the interview, the IT tries to make sure that those people do know something about what you're trying to do, but don't go in with all the technical jargon which nobody's going to know about. Okay, there's the repeat there about support and mandatory. Somebody known you for a couple of years and somebody within professional registered already. So before you submit the application, get it all checked out, get your supporter reference form done, any other documents, and get it all off. Now, the next steps, there's two things, and this is the last slide actually, guys. See your professional registration advisor, go find one, yeah? And then there is an IET course called Preparing for Professional Registration, which gives you all about what the course is about. There's an address there. I haven't checked that address out. I only got this address last night. Somebody at the IET realized that we were doing the presentation this evening and she sent me this one. So I haven't checked it, but I'm sure it's available to Google. And we are making the slides for tonight available. So you don't need to scribble that down or take a screenshot. Okay, question and answers. Now, I think if Abel is still listening, maybe we can look at questions and answers. We've got 25 there, which is quite a lot. And this is where I display, ladies and gentlemen, my technical inabilities, because I've got something called stop share, which I think if I press that, that stops my actual PowerPoint presentation. Abel, are you there somewhere?
Absolutely, I'm still here, Bob. Thanks so much
Excellent,
for
yeah.
the educational and informative talk you've just given. Basically, I've gone through all the questions. There are a few similar ones, so I've grouped them together. So I'm just going to get them out to you quickly and see how well you can address them. The first one is from Salman, who wants to know the difference between an FIET and MIET in terms of roles and responsibilities.
Okay, well that's quite an easy one. You won't find the answer to that in UK spec because this is membership levels of the IET, which are not controlled by the Engineering Council. MIET, as you can get MIET by being supported by a couple of people who are already within the IET, and they will certify that the work you're doing is relevant to the aims of the IET and that you're a responsible citizen and that sort of thing. Then you get membership, and you can get that as sometimes as a student. The graduates that we took on yesterday morning, they can all get their MIET, and a lot of them will come to me and say, because I'm known as Mr. IET within my organisation, and I'm happy to sign anyone who works for the company who's got their degree already. They must be interested and worthy of being having the designated letters MIET. Now, fellowship is a membership grade within the IET, and it's not deliberately connected with being chartered or incorporated or anything else. It's simply a recognition by the IET that the applicant has been for a period of 5 years on superior responsibility, authority, something like that, or they may be within the armed forces as a senior officer. The company I work for, we have a grading structure, and I'm what's known as a principal engineer. Most principal engineers, if you've been a principal engineer for 5 years, fellowship would be not automatic, certainly not automatic, but I would be not surprised if one of my colleagues who's been a principal for 5 years suddenly said, "Hey Bob, I'm putting in," well actually a gentleman rang me today. I don't know the guy, but I know his grade within the organisation, and he's looking for his fellowship. And the first thing is, well, there's a possibility there. It's worth having a phone call with him. If we hadn't got this COVID situation, we'd sit down, have a cup of coffee and sort it out. But I've got some guidance notes for him. I've got some presentation slides about what sustained high-level responsibility is all about. And we would look at that, and then the application form is sent off, and they're not, at the moment, the IT is not interviewing for fellow level of membership. They did interview because I was interviewed for my fellowship. It's quite fellowship because they picked a topic as we're going to ask this guy about this, and it happened to be something I was working on at the time, and I was able to give all the answers, and we had a wonderful professional discussion for an hour. It would have gone on for 3 hours, but the coffee machine ran dry. But yeah, the application for fellowship is determined by 2 fellow assessors who look through the application and say, and they have to justify it. It's not a question looking through, oh yes, red tick in the corner on that. It has to be justified. Say, I believe that his period of 3 years with X company, where he demonstrated his superior abilities, something like that. It's quite a task. It's 2 assessors who know the field, and it's actually quite embarrassing at times. Well, because sometimes you know the person concerned. I had one the other day, somebody able that you know in Network Rail, I can't say who it was, but the application came through and I looked and said, I know this guy, and said, yeah, that's true, that's true. No, I didn't realise he'd done that. And it was very useful, but I could fully justify that he was ready for fellowship. The other assessor and the assessors exchanged notes, confirmed his view was exactly the same. Then it goes to a moderator who looks at the results from the 2 assessors and says he thinks, and sorry, it is usually guys, I'm sorry about that, but that the assessors have both said yes, and the moderator says yes, so that's it done. Then you get your different tie, which is nice. So that's the difference in fellowship and, but there's a disadvantage that if you're elected as a fellow, you're expected to put a lot back into the institution, join the various committees, help other people, promote professional development, all that sort of thing. And to be honest, I've never met any fellow who didn't want to do that in any case. That's why you do it. And it's very rewarding. So if anyone out there tonight is interested in volunteering for the IET, all I can say, it's one of the most rewarding things you can do for the profession. Go for it. Sorry, Abel.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's a very comprehensive answer.
Yeah.
I believe that satisfies Simon's question. We've got a lot of questions here, Bob, so we'll probably try and be a bit pacey. If we don't address all of them to the delegates, we will try and compile them and provide answers and send it to you via the IET. Let's do the best we can tonight.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to spend some time going through individual ones and drafting, an email. But obviously, it's not going to be all done in one afternoon. It's going to take a little while, but it's really, really good when you can help somebody.
Okay, so second question is from Mo. Is membership of the IET a prerequisite for chartership or incorporated engineer?
I think the answer to that is yes. You can transfer membership from one of the other institutions if you're a member of one of the others, but you really do need to be a member of the IET. So you get your MIET, which you can get on the last day of being a student, and then convert that to incorporated engineer or chartered engineer after a few years. So yes, I think it would be right, that is, to join the IET in the first
There's
place.
a similar question here, slightly pitched differently. It's from Robert, who said, I finished my degree in computer science in 2021. Do I become a junior member after graduation, or do I spend a couple of years to gain some experience?
No.
Yeah, so that's his question.
No, it can become MIET as long as he's working in a field that is related to the work of the IET, which generally, being in the IT environment, would be. So he needs to get a couple of people who says, yes, he's got a degree that's relevant and is of good character, shall we say, not trying to go back into the court structure, but of good character, and the work he or she's doing is relevant to the IET. Therefore, we feel he should be awarded membership. It's a bit like joining any organization. If you go and join the squash club, you don't have to prove you're an expert player. You just show that you've got an interest in squash. And it's the same with the IT. But please, if anyone thinks it's an old boys club, no way at all. It's vibrant and thriving. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Bob, for that. So the next question is from Tony C. He said, I'm working in IT at the moment. What's the difference between going via the BCS as a chartered IT professional versus a chartered engineer with the IET?
Now, that's something I'm not really an expert on, but I think the BCS is now part of the IET, and therefore the process, because the process is to gain chartered status with the Engineering Council, and the licensed professional engineering institutions do that on behalf of the Engineering Council. And I think the route of the IET and BCS, which I think is now incorporated within the IET, will be exactly the same. Certainly the end requirements for Engineering Council are exactly the same.
Okay, thank you, Bob, for that. There's a couple of generic questions about, are we going to have the slides for this presentation shared later on? I can answer that question straight away. Yes, because you said that during your talk, that you will have the slides. Then there was another question around, are we going to have this video available later on? As far as I'm aware, the video will be recorded and will be made available for viewing on the IET website later on in the future. So yes, to those two questions. The next question here is from Dave. He said, if we don't have the qualifying education, could we submit a CV or something similar to see if we are at or around the chartered engineering level?
Yes, as long as that CV demonstrates what you've learned, why you learned it, how you learned it, which might be you sat with Fred Bloggs for 6 months and you picked up everything from him. That may be how you've learned it and where you've used it. That's the important thing. As I say, 68% do not have the exemplifying qualifications, but they're still fine professional engineers, just they learnt by a different route compared to the guys and girls who sat at university for 3 or 4 years.
Okay, thank you for that, Bob. The next question is anonymous, and the question is where can I find the IET Code of Conduct?
You can find the IET Code of Conduct on the IET website. I can't give you the actual address, but if you look at the Code of Conduct in UK Spec 3, that's for all chartered engineers, and well, it's the same whether you're chartered, incorporated or technician, doesn't make any difference. And that is virtually word for word the same as the IET Code of Conduct. But the Code of Conduct in 2 words is very simple: be professional. That's really what it's about. If you don't know something, admit it, don't dig the hole any deeper, stop work, say, I can't do this, I don't know how to do it, rather than say, well, I don't know how to do it, but I'll just go on, I don't care what happens. That's not being professional. And then go find out.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that, Bob. Next question from Richard. This is quite, I think this is right up your street, Bob. Richard says, I understood there was previously a concession on accredited bachelor's degrees. If this were, and this was circa around 1999, does this no longer apply?
No, it still applies. There was a big change in 1999-ish, and anyone who's got a bachelor's degree which started before the 1st of September 1999, even if it took 3 or 4 years to go through, that bachelor's degree will be steering you towards chartered, whereas a post-1991 bachelor's steers you towards incorporated. But as we said before, you can still make it for the academic knowledge, the underpinning knowledge and understanding between incorporated and chartered, if you can show supplementary learning. It's terribly important that the big thing there, guys and girls, is just because you've got your incorporated one day or your chartered one day, you don't stop learning.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Bob. Next question from Usama. The question is this seminar certified? I'm not too sure what that means. And will we be able to receive certificates of CPD?
Normally, IET events do offer CPD. What you certainly need to do, you can record on your CPD record. Now that CPD record can be, well, I'll tell you guys, my CPD record is that. I put down something on CPD. When I've done it, I put down, I attended training course, whatever it is. And every year I write it up formally on the IET Career Manager. And the IET used to require you to do a certain number of hours of CPD every year. Now it's a little bit more flexible. You would be, if you did less than about 35 hours a year, people at the IET, and they check, they would be saying, you're not really keeping yourself up to date. Most people, actually the average is about 140 hours CPD, and you've just done 2 hours tonight. So, you know,
you added what I was going to say. So this is a general message to every delegate tonight. This particular talk is worth 2 hours of CPD. So go ahead, log it on your career manager. It counts. Fantastic. The next question is anonymous, and the person here is saying, I don't know how to go about logging and tracking my UK spec competencies. Do you have any recommendations, Bob?
Well, you can do it with Career Manager, where you can look at each one and you need to assess yourself as to what you've done. What I've done, and it started off with a chap who's a personal friend, but one of my staff at the time. And we said, well, let's write down how you have met, how you can demonstrate each of the competence. So we sat down with a piece of paper. We said, what have you done for B3? Said, how can you explain that you have managed implementation of design solutions and evaluate their effectiveness? What have you done to do that? Prove it. And this competence document is a statement of the guy's competence at that time. And it is not an easy job. It took us 6 full evenings to write that document down. It was about 15 pages at the end. But from that, he was able to distill his CV that said, when I was working for this company, I did X, Y, and Z, which demonstrates my competence A1, E7, and B2. And it's a question of writing it down. You can write it down on anything that writes, you can do it. I do it on my phone. This particular guy, we did it on word processor. You can do it in tablets of stone if you wish, but it takes a bit longer to write. But as long as you write it down, keep a record, that's all it counts.
Fantastic. Thanks, Bob, for that. The next question is from Susanna, and she's asking the question, are you required to use Career Manager, or can you still do it in the single application approach?
You can do either. The Career Manager is the preferred one because it just makes handling of the paperwork at the IET a little bit easier, and that's reflected in the fact that it costs less. I don't have the figures to hand. I do apologise for that, but it is cheaper if you go with Career Manager. But if you want to do it on a paper printed form and send it off, please do. You know, but you pay a wee bit more for it. But for some people, that might be the way they wish to do it. It's a free choice.
Okay. Adrian would like to know, I'm using the online career manager. Can this be shared with a PRA before submitting my professional review?
Yes, he needs to somewhere, he has to look around how he gets a guest ticket, and the guest ticket he sends to the PRA. With that guest ticket, the PRA can look at it. Sometimes the candidate might say, specify for the next month. And then the PRA can look at that for the next month. He can make comments on it. I believe that the PRA might even be able to make amendments to it. But yeah, that can be done. And it just saves printing it out and putting it in the post, or doing it as an email and sending it through. It's just another way of doing it, but it certainly can be done, yes.
Brilliant, thanks for that, Bob. There's a question from Andrea, and she says, would you recommend adding the attributes A1, B3, etc. to our experience record to make our application more helpful to the reviewer?
Well, that's a question some reviewers like either way. My thought is that if you can't get the point across without saying that's a D2, you may not be quite ready for that one. And I draw a similarity there. To be honest, guys and girls, my worst presentation that I ever did was 2,000 people in Shanghai with 16 simultaneous translations at the same time. And I won't tell you the main thing that went wrong, but well, I will. I was working for a company where they had a special logo, a special font for their logo. And when I put my first slide up, it should have had, well, it was ABB, it's a well-known company. It should have had in 16-foot high letters, this is Bob Wilson from ABB, and 16-foot high letters. We didn't load the font correctly, and I got two wingdings. I got two V signs and a rabbit 16-foot high on the screen behind me. Not a nice day. But if you have to say, I gave a conference in Shanghai for 2,000 people, you haven't quite got the idea. But you know, you should be able to describe that without saying, oh, it's a D1 communicating in English. Yeah, you should be able to do it without saying that's a B1 or a C2. Yeah, leave it to the assessor to work it out. Yeah, it tests whether you can do it. Yeah.
Yeah, this one is anonymous. The question is, what if I complete all the records and then UK Spec 4 is implemented? Can I be sure that my records will stay on Career Manager and the self-assessments wouldn't be corrupted?
As far as I know, and this is what I've been told, because we get a regular update once a year or twice a year with the IET, so we're up to date on what's happening. As far as I know, the UK Spec 4, there is no change in the technical side. It's just been, there's been clarification in the text describing what the document's all about. But having said that, there is usually a run-in period of a year or something, so that you can't say, well, there's a requirement for A, B, and C on UK Spec 4, which wasn't there on UK Spec 3. So there's a run-in period where you can go for either. I can't quote a timescale for that, but I know that's the kind of thing that happens, because at the end of the day, this is not an exercise ticking boxes. This is an exercise to see whether you're ready to be a professionally registered chartered engineer. And if somebody says that box was wrong, but the application is strong, you're going to get through.
Fantastic. Thank you, Bob. The next question is, I believe, anonymous. It says, does one need to be an IET member to have access to Career Manager?
I think the answer to that is yes, because I think when you first log on to Career Manager, you have to put your IET membership number down. I would expect that to be the case, but I cannot be absolutely certain. What I do know is the Institution of Mechanical Engineers has a scheme which is the same as the Career Manager. It's called MPDS, and I know that you have to be a member of the mechanical engineers to be even a mentor on their MPDS sort of equivalent to Career Manager. So and I am a sort of a free mentor member of the IMechE. I can't put anything down after my name, but I'm a free member of that. And if I have to do that as a mentor, you can bet your life that somebody who wants to use it would have to be a member as well. I'm certain that's the case, yeah.
Thanks for that, Bob. The next question. So David would like to know, do your supporters need to be IET members?
In the ideal world, yes, your best supporters are two fellows of the IET who know what you're doing. That isn't always too easy to obtain. So if they're members of one of the other professional engineering institutions within the Engineering Council, that's good, yeah, no problem there.
Okay, so the next question is, I believe it's anonymous. It says, I'm a bit concerned, or I'm a bit worried about fulfilling the competencies A and B as a systems engineer who does not actually design any system. How can I fulfill the competencies A and B?
Well, that is, it shouldn't be a problem, because if we look at the competencies, I'm looking at A2 at the moment, engage in the creative and innovative development of engineering technology and continuous improvement systems. I think you should be able to find a way round describing what you do as a systems engineer. What might be the case if you take a system at too high a level? I'm going to say a system at too high a level. I'm going to say the railway. The whole of the railway in the UK is a system. Now, the work I do doesn't affect the whole railway. It might affect certain parts in some detail, but it's certainly, so you've got to look at what system is you're trying to use as your example and make sure that that system is picked so that your contribution is clear. Don't go too high. Go for the system you're working on rather than the global system would be the main thought there, yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Yes.
Thanks, Bob. This is an anonymous question. Is it possible to get CEng if you had to change to a different engineering industry halfway through your career? I.e., I've gone from transport to electronic components design.
Yes, the answer to that would be yes. It may cause administrative problems but let's look at the competence of using expert engineering knowledge. The engineering knowledge used in transport and electronic component design might be different, but if you can demonstrate that you have sufficient knowledge in each to be able to do the job, and you must be able to do it if you're still employed in the electronic component design rather than the transport industry, somebody must think that you've got that technical knowledge. It must be there. You wouldn't have been offered the other job. One of the things that does come out there as well is somewhere in the line, it's a little bit vague, peer pressure. If you're working at the same level as 6 other people who were all chartered engineers, and you say, well, I do the same work as them, they're all chartered, but I'm not. It might give you a couple of points to help you put the case forward. Well, actually, they're my peers, and this is all about peer review. The peers who are going to review you are 2 assessors working for the IET as volunteers. That's people like us. Yeah, it's nothing different. It's nothing special. And another 2 peers who are going to interview you for an hour. And those guys and girls who do the interview and the assessment, they're just ordinary engineers. I do both roles. And, you know, there's nothing special about that. So it's peer review. So if you can find other people who've made the similar move from industry 1 to industry 2, it helps. Because all we're looking for, are you a professional engineer? That's the real question.
Good, thanks for the comprehensive response, Bob. So Helen would like to know, are interviews currently taking place for CEng or incorporated engineer?
As far as I know, they're all virtual interviews. I know we do a lot of virtual interviews. As a technical report assessor and technical assessor, most of the applications that I've dealt with have been from somebody living overseas, and particularly actually in Africa for some reason. I don't really know why that is, but it's a bit of a long way from Johannesburg to London for a 2-hour interview. It's probably a lovely trip, or maybe we could do it the other way around. It'd be lovely, but it doesn't happen that way. So most of the technical report interviews are virtual, and I don't see there's interview rooms set up in Savoy Place for just this. And I don't see any reason why those interview rooms can't be used for chartered engineer or incorporated engineer interviews in this time of restricted physical access. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
Zach would like to know, if you have experience from the military, Navy submarine officer, are these schools recorded?
In what way would they be recorded?
The way I understand this question, he's got experience from working in the military and
Yes.
perhaps training in the military. How does he translate that training from the military into academic?
Right. There is work going on at the moment, and I don't know the details of it because I don't work in that. But military knowledge, I think there's a separate set of qualifications set up for chartered engineers working in the military, because there's a lot of engineering in the military. I mean, most of the fighting apparatus that we have, heaven help us, is engineering at the end of the day: tanks, airplanes, boats, guns, whatever. And there is work. I think you have to take that away and come back with some more information on that one. But okay. I have a vague recollection that there's something like chartered engineer military that's coming about. But we can take that away and come back if we can get some contact details for that particular question, please, April. Yeah.
Yeah, it's from Zach. I've noticed that.
Zach, sorry.
Next question is from Tanzin. Can we use a project manager as a supporter who is not an engineer?
Yes, if he or she is your line manager, then that would probably be sufficient. Yeah. He's got to be able to read through the UK spec document. That's the appendices in the back, which I use all the time, and confirm that what the applicant does meets those, and the document, the application form, is basically true. So yeah, project manager who's known them a couple of years, and probably their line manager would be acceptable. Yeah.
Okay. So David is asking a question. All professionally registered engineers with the IET in my last 2 rows report to me. I presume reporting to me means they can't be a supporter.
No, there's no reason why they shouldn't be a supporter, but I think they would have to declare it. on the application form. I had one a couple of years ago where I was asked to be an assessor for a fellowship of somebody who ultimately paid my salary. And I had to review that very carefully. The application was successful in the end because the application was a very good one. I'd seen it as a registration advisor, but you have to be just a little bit careful where there's a possible conflict of interest. Yeah.
Okay, the next question is from Andrea, and she's asking, shall we briefly summarize our experience prior to the last 5 years, or may we just not include it in our application?
I think it's good to put a brief bit there, not in great detail, unless it really adds something to the application. But yeah, you don't sort of say, I'm putting in fellowship today, or sort of chartership today, I'm 45 years old and I'll only tell you what I've done since I was 40, because you've got a career before that and you're still a person before that. And I would say a little bit about it. You might say, during the my first 15 years of career, I was working for blah, blah, blah as a trainee and junior engineer. But since then, 5 years ago, I got promotion too. And in that time, I've been doing whatever and sort of bias it towards the most recent 5 years. Yeah.
Okay, so delegates, we've only got questions. So we've got time for 2 more questions before closing. But like I said, we will write the questions that we've not answered up, and Bob will try to answer them, and we'll get that out to you via the IET in the near future. The next 2 questions are, Helen would like to know, what is the difference between TMIET and MIET?
Right. The difference there is the qualification level. To get TMIET, you need to have an NVQ3 or equivalent, and you're steering, but it's not a path that's concrete, you know, cast in concrete, but you're steering to go for technician and to registration at technician engineer. If you go for MIET, you would normally have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, and you would be steering towards incorporated engineer or chartered engineer. But you can cross over between them if you can demonstrate that you've got the additional underpinning knowledge and understanding and how you've got that knowledge. There's nothing to say that you can't, that you start off as a technician engineer, maybe out in the field, sort of in our industry, repairing signaling systems, and you become, you go for incorporated engineer. So I've got the extra knowledge, I've got the competencies, and you end up as sort of full chartered engineer and maybe even fellowship. One of the guys I work with, he started off as an electrician. He's now a fellow of the IET, and he happens to be, he's an exceptionally good engineer. And he won't be listening tonight because I know he isn't. But seriously, he is a very competent man, and to see him as fellow of the IET is a privilege. Yeah.
One last question. It's a lengthy one. I'll be as quick as I can. It's from Carrie. He said, "Hi Bob. At age 61, I have decided it's about time I attempted to obtain my professional registration. I am a principal engineer working in the rail industry on telecoms design, such as FTNX, operational communications. I have an MSc in project management as I was a project manager, but decided that I prefer to get my hands dirty in the workplace. Would it be possible to have a discussion with you to give me some pointers on applications? Thank you."
Yes, right, something on that. If you, I've mentioned a couple of times in the evening, if you go down to the IET website and look for a PRA in your local area, you will find one. But they aren't necessarily in your particular discipline. I don't do that personally, because when I put my name forward for that, I was flooded out with applications and I could not handle it. So what I only do railway, and generally Network Rail, who pays my salary at the moment, but other railway people do come to me. But my own name isn't on the open list. and I had an application just yesterday from the IET for me to go through 15 applications. So, you know, that's what flooding out is. But anybody working within the railway, and if this application is looking with FTN, we know what that is. Yeah, I've no problem with him taking my Network Rail email address. I don't know whether, is that person listening now? Would you like, well, maybe we can sort that out.
Yeah, we can reach out through the registration attendance list.
Yeah, I've no problem with talking on a one-to-one with a few people. That's no problem at all. Yeah.
So sorry, folks, that's all we can take for tonight. We're already 1 minute over. I want to thank you again for joining us tonight. It's been a really good talk with Bob, as always. Bob, thank you so much for making out time to join us tonight. Just to emphasize, this talk is worth 2 hours of CPD, so go ahead, claim it. And to give you a heads up, we've got other events coming up within the IET Buckinghamshire Local Network. Go to our website and register. The most imminent one is on the 8th of October, where we have a couple of experts from HS2 presenting on railway electrification. If you could join us on the night, that would be much appreciated. Thank you so much for your time. Stay safe, and hopefully we see you soon in the future. Good night. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Good night. Thanks for listening. Thanks. Cheers and